Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com. This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN.
Welcome to another edition of PHRC Speaks Fair Housing in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Adrian Garcia, Director of Fair Housing and the Commercial Property Division for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Now, what's interesting about Fair Housing Month, because we are celebrating Fair Housing Month, is the ability to talk to all kinds of people that work in every kind of organization you can imagine. And sometimes in that span, you don't imagine how their work affects fair housing. But I think this new administration has caught on. If you took a look at the Biden administration's executive order, they talked about advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. So they are looking at how fair housing looks moving forward. How will it advance equity for all? What programs and policies need to be examined to redress inequities for equal opportunity? What partnerships can be built between HUD and external partners and partners between various external partners with each other to further fair housing in this country? How can coordination, communication, and engagement be increased to serve underserved communities? And more importantly, how will the Fair Housing Book of Business look differently at affirmatively furthering fair housing and jurisdictions that receive federal funds? So when I see this executive order and what it states, I'm thinking it screams innovation. It screams partnerships. And I think our guest today is going to be able to talk to us a little bit about what she has done under her organization that is actually partnership-based and innovative. So our guest today is Maria Nixa Gonzales. She is president of HACE, Hispanic Association of Contractors and Enterprises, a nonprofit 501c3 community development organization in Philadelphia. Now, since 1996, she's been responsible for raising development capital from a broad base of private and public foundations and governmental bodies. She heads HACE's development team, managing over $100 million of commercial and housing development projects that have contributed to the stabilization and revitalization of Philadelphia neighborhoods. Under Maria's leadership, HACE has created a supportive community for elders through development of affordable rental housing and the construction of a life center that provides frail elders with social and health services so that they can remain living at home for as long as possible. Additionally, Maria has led the creation of HACE's housing counseling program to serve as a one-stop shop for housing-related services, which is certified by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the National Industry Standards for Home Ownership Education and Counseling. Ms. Gonzales received her bachelor's degree with honors from St. Joseph University. She's a member of the Philadelphia Planning Commission, serves as chair of the Community Trust Board for the American Street Empowerment Zone, is chair of the Oversight Board of Mayor's Office of Community Empowerment and Opportunity, serves in the Philadelphia Housing Trust Fund, and is secretary of the board for the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations. Needless to say, what we are talking about is a heavy hitter in the community around Philadelphia. And so I want to welcome Maria to Fair Housing in the 21st Century. PHRC Speaks. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Adrian. It's great to be here with you today. I'm really excited about the work that you're doing and look forward to talking to you about what we're doing here in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. I was excited because, as I said at the beginning in my intro, in reading the executive order that came out of the Biden administration, what leapt from the page for me was the innovation, and it was partnerships. And so from what I have read and been able to study and research upon HACE, I see that they're right in the thick of those two things, innovation and partnerships. So what's interesting in HACE's story is its inception, its beginning. Talk to us a little bit about the beginning of HACE and why it came to be.
So HACE was started in 1982 by a group of 5 community leaders that were working in the redevelopment of the commercial corridor, Centro de Oro, in North Philadelphia. And they got together to save what is called now the HACE Mall. It's a commercial property that served as a home to social service organizations and also small businesses that provided goods and services and jobs in the community. So the group of those 5 leaders got together, did the financing to redevelop that commercial property, which HACE owns now. And from there, we took on to tackle other issues that were affecting our neighborhoods, like affordable housing. So from there, we jumped into developing affordable housing for families and seniors. We still develop commercial spaces on the corridor. Now we serve 3 corridors at Centro de Oro, parts of American Street, and also the front Allegheny commercial corridor that are located within our target neighborhoods. Because, it's really important to have housing and also commercial activity that really supports everything, the economic vitality of our neighborhoods. Today, we own about 450 units of affordable housing. We have our own property management company, so we develop, the one arm develops it, the other one manage our commercial properties. And we also have other social service programs that provide much support to families in our community.
So I'm curious as to, and that's a great overview of how you've come to be, but I'm curious as to HACE's vision, what it's trying to accomplish, and more importantly for me, the why, because the why sets it all up. So what is it that you saw in your community, that the organization saw in the community that was lacking, and you're trying to accomplish?
So the way that we work in our community is based on developing 10-year neighborhood plans.
Okay.
So we have been doing that since 1995. We've developed and implemented 2 10-year neighborhood plans, and we are in the 5th year of implementation of our 3rd 10-year neighborhood plan. And neighborhood planning is really at the core of who we are and how we do our work, because we engage various stakeholders from the community, from small businesses, leaders from social service organizations, other community-based groups, residents, which is really important, elected officials, and representatives from various city departments to get together and talk about what are the needs of our neighborhood, where do we stand within the context of the city as far as needs and challenges, and also establish priorities based on the feedback that we get from the stakeholders in the neighborhood. So we are working with other stakeholders to tackle the issues that they determine that are really are critical within that period of time. And then we develop a pipeline of different programs and activities and maybe real estate projects to tackle within that period of time to address those needs. And we also work with the other community-based organizations, because we know as an entity, we can provide everything for everyone. We focus on what we do best, which is bricks and mortar development, housing counseling, and supporting small businesses to create jobs in our neighborhoods. So from that perspective, we really work in concert with others to tackle those issues. And we have been pretty successful. I would say within the first 2 neighborhood plans, we leverage over $100 million of investments in our neighborhoods. And then now in the 5th year of our current plan, we've actually leveraged about $98 million of investment. So there's been a lot of positive stuff that has happened. And And I would like to say that the previous two plans really set the stage and built upon on how the next one was what the focus was going to be and what we were going to tackle, and really set the baseline for how to build and leverage additional investments in our neighborhoods.
So I want to ask you, what changes have you seen in regards to overall access and opportunity to housing? And you're developing housing for the elderly community, or for the community at large, but you have a focus on the elderly community. Tell me a little bit about those changes that you've seen, the needs that you saw that had led you to this.
So I think one of the things that we've seen is that there's fewer and fewer resources for affordable housing over the years, and specifically for elders. I think that HUD took away the major mechanism for developing affordable senior housing through the Section 202 program. I think the last appropriation was done around 2005, thereabouts. And I know that the program made a comeback now, which is really critical because it really provides the resources for us to develop properties to target seniors. In Philadelphia and also in Pennsylvania, we have one of the largest growing elderly populations that is aging in place in our communities. So to that extent, we want to make sure that we're providing that supportive housing to that vulnerable part of our population so that they can age in their communities with dignity. And they're able to do it comfortably. So there's been less and less resources for that particular segment of our population. And also our supportive housing is really critical because we also have a supportive service component. So it's not just the housing, it's the supportive services that are available to so that they can maintain their independence and remain vital members of our community for as long as possible, because that's really, really important in our communities, especially when we're dealing with populations that, have not so good health outcomes because of whatever, trajectory of life they've had. And of course, when we're dealing with people that have been suffering through poverty, they have less access to health services, healthier foods, other supports that they need in order to remain, to have a healthier life outcome. So we've seen that. In addition to that, we've seen less resources for homeownership. Okay, when we're talking about affirmative fair housing, it's the full spectrum of housing, rental and homeownership. So we've seen less resources for homeownership. And one of the fears that we have now, what's been happening over the last 20 years, is that certain areas of our neighborhood are gentrifying. Yeah. Property values are changing. People are getting displaced. If you're a renter, you're more than likely to get displaced. If you're a renter, you also, and you're low income, more than likely you are cost burdened in that housing. So paying 50% of your income towards housing expenses, which, has all these other negative effects that affects that household. So we've seen less of that. And, one of the things that we're trying to change is how do we have true equity in our neighborhoods by having, a healthy amount of homeowners and also renters.
What role does HACE play in trying to stem gentrification in areas where they operate? Is there a partnership effort? Are there programs that would reward those would-be gentrificators to kind of join the fold of maintaining some housing stability?
How we're tackling that is, first, we have a very robust housing counseling program. And we have also a robust credit counseling initiative where we actually provide secure credit cards as a way to build credit, because credit is one of the largest impediments, whether you rent or want to own a home, and sometimes even, get insurance or even apply for. So we are really working very hard to help our clients build credit, maintain their credit, and make, sound decisions for how they want to run their household to make sure that they're able to preserve credit and also have access to other resources and benefits that they will be eligible for.
Let me ask you, are you also building, say, single family homes, or are you strictly sticking to the multifamily kind of style of building or development?
So we, over the last 15 years, we built 100 affordable housing units, home ownership. So we also do that, and we don't count it as part of our portfolio because once we develop it, we sell it off. So we have about, I would say, 75 properties throughout our neighborhoods, so that addresses the blight and vacancy in community. And also we've built new construction housing. And right now we have a partnership with the Land Bank of Philadelphia and also the Philadelphia Housing Authority, where we're getting donated land to be able to redevelop it into affordable home ownership housing.
Nice.
Working with these entities to be able to, develop that pipeline of properties so that we have readily available housing stock for people to buy right now. And we hope to develop that in increments of anywhere between 15 and 20 properties a year, not because of lack of capacity, it's because of lack of resources to be able to make those units affordable for families earning 60% of median household income. And one of the mechanisms that we are also building in our neighborhood is having a land trust. So the land will be placed in the Good Lands Trust, so that we're able to preserve affordability.
Great. So in that, there's probably some kind of ownership clause that says, hey, you know, in order to sell it, you must maintain it affordable, those kinds of things. Yeah,
correct.
Those are the things that are going to help maintain that housing stability and maintain those neighborhoods intact. One of the things I liked, and this is kind of a little off script, but one of the things I liked about what HACE is doing is that there's a bit of cultural identity with these neighborhoods as well. The names, the colors used, those kind of things. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the neighborhood that we serve is predominantly Latino, about 85%. So really that defines a lot of, the spaces that are in our neighborhood. Like you go through the commercial corridors and you hear music, Latino music. We have metal palms installed on our commercial corridor. The murals that you see throughout the neighborhood really speaks to the cultural identity. And we love to celebrate that through art, through festivals and events, because that really adds to the vibrancy of our community. And we like to really celebrate that at every opportunity that we have. For example, our recently completed senior housing development through PHFA's low-income housing tax credits, we installed this beautiful sculpture that really celebrates the historical significance of the neighborhood, because it's near a rail yard, and also the vibrancy of the culture of the people that live here. And we like to do that every opportunity that we get. We also develop a walking trail near our housing, so that people have an opportunity to benefit from the community has to offer. And we also installed sculptures along the trails to be able to celebrate the cultural identity of the community. So we really like to integrate that so that people feel good about where they live. And also because, just because we're serving a low-income neighborhood doesn't mean that they're any less deserving of beauty and of beautiful, assets within their community.
One building that was developed for the elderly, it's apartments, beautiful colors, absolutely beautiful building. If you look at it, you're like, wow, those are high-end finishes, at least on the exteriors as I saw them. Talk to us a little bit about how you kind of manage that, the ability of giving beauty, but also giving quality housing.
So our approach to developing affordable housing is as if we're going to develop housing as if we were going to live in it. Really important to me. So that development that you mentioned, that's Casa Indiana, 50 units affordable housing. It's beautiful inside and out. It has a peace garden in the back. so the residents can plant. We have raised planting beds. We have green areas. We have that sculpture along the front that creates like a little plaza in front of the building. So we, once we are able to have gatherings, we will really utilize that space. So that's our approach to developing communities. And, there's one thing about that people don't talk about when you affirmatively further fair housing is that housing was supposed to be designed to also be partner or take advantage of other assets within communities. Okay, so when we talk about other assets within communities, it could be commercial corridors, it can be infrastructure developments, our parks and open spaces. So one of the things that we're doing now that we build, really a great number of affordable housing developments in our neighborhoods, we are pivoting and building more open recreational spaces where we built the trail, this year we're going to be developing an open park across from Casa Indiana, where we are also building an open plaza in another part of our neighborhood. And we're working with the city's Parks and Recreation under the Rebuild program to fully refurbish our only Class A recreation center in the neighborhood. So we're talking about housing is what other assets, what other, what you call amenities families need, right, to have a healthier neighborhood that they can enjoy. And you saw that now during the pandemic where we needed more open spaces that were safe and clean and open to our children and adults. So that's one of the things that we're focusing on is what other resources do we need to make sure that our residents have in the neighborhood so that it is really a healthier, vibrant community for all.
And all of that sounds absolutely awesome, and it's certainly in the right directions. And it's key to me that you spoke about the amenities within the community because it's absolutely true. You can't just pop a housing unit and expect that everyone that's going to buy and or rent that housing unit will have a car. They need to be able to have access to transportation and all of the amenities around. That is the entirety of affirmatively furthering fair housing. Because without that, then you end up segregating those that are living in low-income housing. You end up segregating them to one area of the community, and that would be counterproductive. You started putting on your planning hat as you were talking about the amenities and affirmatively furthering fair housing. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing in the Planning Commission?
In the Planning Commission, one of the things that we're working on is how to have more mixed income housing in those neighborhoods that are, higher income, like the Center City area and surrounding neighborhoods, to make sure that if you are doing a development and a developer is seeking density bonuses, that they're able to put really affordable housing units on site or nearby, within a certain distance. I think it's half a mile. And also, if they don't want to take that route, then making a contribution into the Housing Trust Fund so that we can build more housing. Personally, I like to see the housing on site because we really need to make sure that we integrate other neighborhoods within Philadelphia so that there's a healthy balance between higher income folks and lower income folks in neighborhoods. So that's one of the things that we are working at to make sure that we are, as we're developing more housing, that we do it with a making sure that we have more integration in mixed income housing. You
spoke about the pandemic, and no one could have imagined a pandemic that has taken so many lives, and so many people have been ill from it. And it's basically shut everything down. How has this pandemic affected the way HACE delivers its services to its consumers?
So I think initially, we worked remotely for about 5 weeks at the beginning of the pandemic. But we took the steps to make sure that we were able to come back, the staff, to the office and be on site to help our residents that live within our multifamily developments, but also help the surrounding community. Because as resources were becoming available, we knew that because of language barriers, technology barriers, and also infrastructure barriers related to internet, our residents were not going to be able to take advantage of many of the rental assistance programs and other resources that were being made available, or even apply for unemployment. So for us, it was very critical that we came back and figure and develop a process and policies so that we can help people in our offices. So we had to restructure ourselves to make sure that we were physically here to be able to assist our community. It was really important to us, and be able to refer them to resources that were available, either for testing, for food, utility assistance, to make sure that there were no shutoffs. In our senior buildings, we couldn't conduct any more activities because we used to have social activities and we could no longer hold that, but we pivoted to make sure that we were supplementing what our residents were getting, and also reducing the amount of times that they had to go out to the market, because in those spaces, that's where they were more susceptible to catching the virus. So we really supplemented them with additional food every week. And then lastly, what we did was we made sure that we were able to coordinate with the Department of Public Health to get them vaccinated where they live. That was really important, because when you're dealing with seniors, I think some people don't realize that it's really challenging for them because of their health conditions, for them to stand in line for long hours on a line. They don't know how they're going to, get those appointments that were just like, moving really fast and booking very quickly. So it was important for us to make sure that we had providers that came to our buildings to get them vaccinated. And as of 2 weeks ago, everyone is vaccinated. So that was really important, so that they're not as fearful to come out. And when they have families visiting, at least, there's an extra protection for them to make sure that they don't catch the virus.
Absolutely great work. And it's a testament to the way you've kind of set up that care center to make sure that the elderly have access to the health services. Because if there's anything that we've learned, is that this pandemic thrusts the inequalities that exist in housing and in our neighborhoods and wealth. Because even in education, when you look at families that are out there, not every kid had access to internet, not every kid had access to a computer or an iPad. And so if there's anything, this has brought the inequalities and inequities in several segments to light. And so organizations like yours, which I applaud, are innovative and are basically using those partnerships to move forward. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about HACE, maybe some future plans for HACE?
One of the things that we're looking at, and when we're talking about housing, and one thing that we haven't done too much is provide housing for persons with intellectual disabilities. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we're doing right now. We will be breaking ground in a new 30-unit affordable housing developments. They're going to be efficiency units, but all, self-contained. You have living, kitchen, private bathroom, and storage facilities. And that's going to be located in the corridor, which is really the heartbeat of our community. So you have access within walking distance to social service providers, supermarkets, banks. It's a great location, and it has great transit that runs along, right in front of the building. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, is making sure that we expand the type of housing that we provide. So that's going to be, the next, type of housing that we're going to be developing. We're still going to do, senior housing. We're going to develop homeownership housing and the rental family housing. But I think, now that we're building the right partnerships with social service providers, because we're not a social service provider. So it's very important for us to have those partnerships. Those things have aligned so that we are able to provide that type of housing.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Adrian. It was my pleasure.
For more information, or if you believe you've been a victim of discrimination in housing, visit us online at www.phrc.pa.gov or call us at 717-787-9780. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of PHRC Speaks. Until next time, take care, be good, and be fair to each other.
This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN. To get your program on PCN Fusion and for more information, contact info@pcntv.com.